Okay, Paul, I believe you hold a very special place in the history of St. Lucie High. You were the first lay president, correct?
First lay principal.
Principal.
Correct,
Okay.
yes.
And when did your relationship with the high school start?
Well, my professional relationship began in the fall of '72. I came from Augustinian Academy that had closed the year before, and was hired by Father Durso and worked with Paul Martell on with football, and also coached wrestling and track for a couple of years.
Okay. So your initial focus was primarily in the sport area?
Yes, and physical education. And after a couple of years, I taught some math classes also.
We'll just hold for these fire trucks. Competition there.
Some of the perks of an urban location, right?
That's right.
That's it. Okay. Good to go?
Sure.
And then when did you become principal?
I became principal in August of '83
And how long did you hold that position?
until August of '95.
Okay. Now, what was it about SLUH that attracted you first, other than the fact that you needed a job after Augustinian closed?
Well, I guess Paul Martell was probably the only person I knew personally, and that was having coached against him and been on committees with him for the 6 previous years that I was at Augustinian, and with Paul's way, he was always very helpful and very open. And when he realized that Augustine was closing and that I would be looking for a job, he encouraged me to come and apply here, and I did.
What did you find out, or what did you feel was a real defining moment for you in your career here?
Oh boy. One moment?
Well, no, it doesn't have to be one moment. What were let's go back and say, what were the highlights of your time at SLUH?
I guess, well, first of all, being hired and being a part of of that 72 undefeated football team was an initial highlight. Being asked to be assistant principal in '79, I believe it was, and then being appointed principal in '83. But man, oh man, so many moments that have affected me and have really, I guess, defined my life and how I continue to live my life have been part, and the people that I met here, both adults and students. I still have many, many memories, and the encounters that I had with students were some that I'll cherish forever.
Now, you were the first lay principal before you had been all Jesuits.
Uh-huh.
How did that affect, I guess I want to say affect the school, but how was the transition, or was there a transition between Jesuit and lay?
Oh, I'm sure there was. One of the things I remember most in my first year was when fall turned to winter. Several of the Jesuits were concerned that they wouldn't be the first to know of a snow day. This was going to be a great transition for them, where they used to have the principal living in their Jesuit quarters, but now someone off campus would have to make that decision, and they might be second or third to learn about a snow day. But I had a lot of help in those early years, and actually all through my 12 years as principal, from very good Jesuits, and I leaned on them extensively. I have to say that my knowledge of and familiarity with Ignatian principles and Jesuit education were really pretty on the surface before that. So there were many Jesuits. Probably Father Jerry Sheehan was my best confidant and friend, and somebody I'll always be very thankful and grateful for.
Okay. Other than the fact that you were the first lay principal, what other changes did you see during your time here at SLUH High?
Well, I experienced, for good or bad, the diminishment of Jesuits. I forget how many Jesuits we had on staff when I first took over as principal, but every year it was fewer and fewer, and to try to make that transition from, it wasn't a majority of Jesuits, but it was a pretty good number of Jesuits to fewer and fewer, while still trying to maintain the Jesuit identity and Jesuit tradition. That was a big challenge that we had.
How about changes for the students, not just in terms of the Jesuits, but in terms of the Men for Others and that type of service activity?
Well, actually, when I came in '72, the senior service project was in full swing. Father Rich Bailey, I believe, started that, and I wasn't familiar with it at all. I had a younger brother who actually came to finish his high school career. He was at Augustinian and came with me. Some would say I came with him. And he got involved in this community service project, and we would discuss it, and it made a big difference in his life, and I was very impressed that a school that I had heard of with all of the academic rigor and so forth would allow their seniors 3 weeks away from classes to do these different community service projects. That was very impressive.
Did you see any change in the students? You know, we look now at the millennials these days, and they have different attitudes toward education, pretty much different attitudes toward the world. What did you see in the students throughout your tenure here?
Well, I guess what I saw is a lot of similarities. You know, that's the one great thing about teaching in high school is, as long as you don't look at yourself in the mirror, time stands still, because you're always looking at 14 to 18-year-old kids, and kids will be kids. Dress styles change, and I remember Paul Martell going crazy about the length of hair and sideburns and so forth, which soon became, you know, no big deal, and then no deal at all. And then when it did, kids stopped having long hair and stopped growing sideburns long.
Stop telling them they couldn't.
That's right. That's right. But there were, we were so fortunate to have the group of kids that we had as students that almost all really wanted to be here, and almost all wanted to achieve in something, a lot academically, some in the arts, theater, music, some athletically. Some would achieve those things, some would fall short, but they would all seem to be trying to do things and to get involved in something. I remember when Joe Schulte came to me and said, I think I'm going to have a juggling club. And I said, you're going to have a what? He said, there's 3 or 4 kids that would like to meet and juggle things. And I said, well, I guess if you're going to be there, and depending on what they're going to be juggling, I guess that would be fine. And then, the rifle club, we'd have kids. I'd go to the national meetings of Jesuit administrators, and especially later in the 80s and the early 90s when violence in school was becoming a real issue. And I would say, at St. Lucia High down in the basement, we always keep a dozen or so loaded .22 rifles down there, and we invite the kids to come and shoot them at the end of the day. We have a priest that goes down there with them, and one of the few schools that hand out guns.
How did you see the curriculum change while you were here?
I think, technology, I was at the tail end of my tenure. Technology was making a big impact on the curriculum, but the faculty, it seemed, were very open to creating a curriculum that was pertinent, that was going to be helpful for the kids as they moved on in their education. They, for the most part, kept current with the different educational methods, and also with the content and subject matter. I know in science there were different courses that were added, and we tried to stay current while still maintaining that tradition that we had. It was always a real iffy thing to start tinkering with tradition. We've always done it that way, therefore that's the way we will do it. But I always told them change is good for you, not necessarily for me. But
what makes SLUH different from other schools around St. Louis?
Well, the thing that I've found to be different is we were blessed with having a student body that came from the whole metropolitan area. We were not at all limited by district or by even neighborhood or section of the school. We had kids, I forget what the number of area codes were, but we had a kid, actually 2, who were from New Haven, Missouri. and they didn't commute every day. They lived with their grandmother over on the hill during the week. We had a kid that came in every day from Troy, Missouri. But they came from all over, and some kids walked to school. So to bring all of those kids together, I think that was a distinctive thing about St. Louis U High, and having kids sit next to one another who had really nothing but age and maybe their Catholic education in common. I remember one incident, one event, when we were interviewing students. There was a day that my first interview was with a kid who was graduating from a class of 3 or 4, I think, and it was from Holy Trinity Parish in downtown St. Louis. And in talking to him, I'm not sure that he was any further west than Grand Avenue until that day that he came for the interview with his mother. His mother was a single parent. And the next interview was with a kid who, when I asked the question about, how'd you spend your summer vacation or something, he went on safari with Dana Brown for his summer vacations. And it just struck me, and it always has struck me, that the differences in the backgrounds of these two kids, and to bring them together, and both did very well in their own realms. And I'm sure if they had contact with one another, they both learned quite a bit from each other. So that diversity, I think, was a great thing.
Try to tell the viewers, the people that are going to view this documentary, why SLUH is the best choice for secondary education for young men that are academically qualified to do that.
Well, one thing in my experience here that made it such a great place for that type of kid was that at St. Louis U High, it was not only all right to succeed academically, but people actually applauded and celebrated academic excellence. It was not seen in, if you get 800 or 900, whatever, how many kids we had at that time, young adolescent males scoring high on your Chinese test is not always seen as one of the great achievements, or creating something in fine arts or something was, could be seen as a little iffy in your character. But here it seemed that everybody, or I can't say everybody, most everybody appreciated kids for what they could do. Very few of them could do everything well. Some did some things very well, but there was always an appreciation of that success.
Okay, great. Can you tell us some of your favorite memories of the school?
Oh boy.
Well, there've got to be some things that stick out.
I was, after I got your email and looked over the questions, I started reminiscing with my wife about the different things that had happened, and I do remember the first Jesuit funeral that I attended here at St. Louis U High, and Father Tom Cummings gave the eulogy, and I was sitting with Brother Tom Thornton, if you know Brother Thornton. And we sat through the Mass and the eulogy that Father Cummings gave, and after it was over, Tom Thornton nudged me and he said, when things quiet down a little bit, I want you to go over to the casket and lift it up and make sure that Father so-and-so is in there, because what Father Cummings was talking about has nothing to do with what this guy was like. I remember getting a standing ovation, the only one that I got in my years here, when Father Houlihan had to make a change in faculty. One of the Jesuits who was a hardcore kind of guy and was causing problems, and was getting very old, infirm, I guess. So Father Houlihan made a change, and this priest was a math teacher, and Father Houlihan knew that I had a minor in math, so he asked me to take over his classes. So I agreed with it, and when I went into the classes, the kids stood up and gave me a standing ovation for taking the place of Father, whatever his name was, and being able to do that. I remember we had a priest that used to roller skate in the school building in the evenings. That's the way he got his exercise. And I guess I was assistant principal at the time, but we were having trouble with thefts during basketball games. We were having, people were coming on campus and stealing the batteries out of cars. So we decided that we would have two detectives from the 2nd District stand in the kitchen downstairs and look out the window onto the parking lot. Well, the rector didn't announce this to the Jesuit community, and as Father was skating around the building, he skated down the hall right below us and came into the Jesuit dining room and wanted to get a snack, so he burst into the kitchen area, and the detective jumped up and turned on him, and he let out with a scream that he didn't know what was happening, but these strange men in the cafeteria, or in the kitchen. Wow. So many memories. Father Kurgan, another great Jesuit and great friend, so pious and so just a sweet man. And I remember during our end of the year conversations, I had him, and we were talking, and I was going to ask him to take on another responsibility, or to take on more kids. I forget exactly what it was, and he looked at me and he said, "Paul, you know this place is a lot like a whorehouse." I said, "Father, what do you mean?" He says, "The better you are, the more work you get."
Okay. Well, on that note, I will ask the other folks here if they have any questions. I think they're all ready for their afternoon break. Is there
Probably so.
anything else you can think of that you would like to tell folks that might view this?
Just a great I hate to call it an institution, because it sounds so rigid. I guess a great experience for those kids that come through here, for the faculty and staff that work here, and all learn from each other. I would be remiss if I didn't mention another person that was I admired a great deal, and I stopped and talked to him on the way in this morning. And that's Dee Bird, who is retiring after, anybody know how many years?
30 plus, 40?
Oh, way more than that, I think, probably close to 50. But if everybody could do their job and handle their responsibilities the way Dee Bird has handled them the last 50 or 60 years, this place would be even a better place. He's just a wonderful, wonderful man, and a great example for all of us, and we're blessed to have him here for so long.